Hi, welcome to Dr. Mark's Music Notes. I'm Dr. Mark Runkles, and today we're going to learn how to apply the Metronome March practice technique to a specific musical example. For an overview of the Metronome March technique, see the video called The Metronome March, Mastering Difficult Passages in 6 Steps. I'll put the link in this video's description so you can find it if you haven't already seen it. The first step in the Metronome March is to find the hard part. We'll look at measures 219 to the end of the Allegro non troppo first movement in Gustav Vogt's Quatrième Solo de Concert. This 21-bar passage contains long strings of 16th notes at a relatively fast tempo, as well as a variety of articulation patterns. Here it is. This passage isn't terribly difficult by itself for the oboe, as it mostly runs up and down an F major scale. There are a few note combinations to be mindful of at the performance tempo. However, the primary difficulty here is fatigue, since it's a bunch of fast notes at the end of a long movement with limited breathing opportunities. I chose this section because it's the type of section that might require the Metronome March for its entirety, and because I wanted to avoid any copyright issues. I own the copyright to this edition. If you'd like to play it, I'll paste a link into the video description. For our purposes here, we'll pretend it's the hardest piece ever written. The first thing to determine is the final performance tempo so we can set the metronome. This movement is marked Allegro non troppo, which is allegro but not too fast. 120 beats per minute is the maximum I would play this at, and it will probably settle in a little under that. The final tempo is somewhere between 112 and 120 beats per minute. So that means we'll start with the metronome set for 60 beats per minute. 60 beats per minute is often a good place to start. If this passage was super hard and we needed to cut the tempo in half again, we could leave it on 60 beats per minute and think of that as the 8th note at 30 beats per minute overall. My metronome only goes down to 35 beats per minute. Our next task is to break this into manageable chunks. I'm calling this step 2A. Conveniently for us, this passage divides neatly into 4 4-bar chunks. We'll ignore the 5 measures with long notes and trills for now until we're closer to the performance tempo. Our first chunk is from measure 219 through the downbeat of measure 223. Our second chunk is from beat 2 of measure 223 through the downbeat of measure 227. Our third chunk is from measure 227 through the downbeat of measure 231, and our final chunk is from measure 233 through the downbeat of measure 237. These next 4 slides are images of the 4 chunks. I'll discuss how to apply the Metronome March to the first chunk, and this method can be applied to the other 3. Our next step, which I've labeled 2B, is to break each chunk into smaller pieces. You may not have to break things down this far, but it is effective if the passage is extremely difficult or you hit a plateau before reaching your target tempo. A chunk can be broken down, measure by measure, or even beat by beat. These next 4 slides show the first chunk broken into 4 pieces. Each piece is 1 measure. We're going to pause here and finish applying the Metronome March to this passage next week. Feel free to leave a comment if you have any questions, and click the subscribe button for notifications about more information on practice techniques and other musical topics. Thanks for watching. Play on.